Hey everyone, and welcome to the NDIS Circle. I'm Dan McCutcheon, and today we have a special guest, Mia Poklepovich, also known as the Freedom Therapist and Business Coach. Mia uses her experience operating a therapy practice in remote WA to help therapists to achieve time and lifestyle freedom in their businesses, all while avoiding the B word, burnout. Mia's unique blend of experience, first and foremost as a therapist and now business coach, equips her with invaluable insights into creating sustainable and fulfilling professional lives for therapists. We're thrilled to have her here to share a journey and mission and strategies for combating burnout and being successful in the therapy field. So welcome, Mia, to the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. So nice to be here and so lovely to have a chat. That was such a beautiful bio. So thanks for letting me sit through that.
No problems. Hope I didn't miss anything. But yeah, welcome. Today I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about your sort of personal journey and what you're up to now, and a bit about the business, and then I thought also we might touch on burnout as well, because I know that's really what I do as a support coordinator. Burnout is a really sort of big issue, as it is with therapy providers as well. We've got these KPIs, these billables, and then actually the work that we're doing is also quite it can be emotional, can't it? You carry that emotion from the people that you're supporting, and I think that we need to look after ourselves as well. So yeah, I really wanted to sort of get into that and bounce some ideas off you and chat about that, because I think that's a really topical issue at the moment. Can you start by sharing a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become a therapist?
So I am an occupational therapist. I have been an OT for quite some time now. I started my career in Perth, where I studied, and I did my background in exercise and sports science. So I was very interested in the body, and then as we started to learn more about the holistic side of health, I was like, I really enjoy the mental health. I really enjoy just like learning how to look after your body, how to really make sure that, you're using your body to its full potential. And when I finished my sports science degree, I ended up doing my Masters of OT and never looked back, actually, which was, it was such a beautiful transition, and I'm so glad. I didn't really know what an OT did until I started studying it, which is, I think, classic for us. Like, it was a really unknown profession quite a few years ago, and now it's so much more wider known, which is great. I was really lucky. I had an auntie who was an OT, and I knew a couple of others, but I don't think I fully grasped how much an OT can actually do, which is pretty amazing.
It's so wide-ranging, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like, we have so many options for career trajectory and so many avenues that you can go down, and you can absolutely like weave your whole passion into what you're doing as well, which is pretty special. I started working in WA, and I worked straight away in disability once I graduated. Loved it. Worked through disability employment, running programs, coordinating programs, and then I always knew that I wanted to work a bit more remote, and on a whim applied for a job in Darwin, moved to Darwin 7-8 years ago now, I think about 7 years ago, and haven't looked back. So I've been in the territory ever since, which is one of my most favourite places in the world. It's pretty special. I am really lucky. I started working in Darwin for a few years, and then I ended up moving down to Mabuntuai, Alice Springs, where I live now, and I love it here so much. It's an incredibly special place, and the cultural learnings and spirituality in this spot is just absolutely mind-blowing. I've learned so much more than I could ever give.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I've been to Darwin a couple of times and travelled through and been to some remote Aboriginal communities as well through Pilbara and Kimberley, and yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And I just feel like you can't grasp it until you actually get out there. I had absolutely no idea. Doing plans for people in the Pilbara and Kimberley is when I was an NDIA planner, and you don't get it until you actually get out there.
I think that's really relevant too. Like, I think you've got to go into it with a really open mind and be really willing to learn when you are going remote. So we mainly run a remote outreach practice through my company OT Inspire, but I do really believe that I think there is so much more scope for increased cultural training, increased cultural awareness, and it's such an important thing, I think, to admit that, you didn't really know what you were doing or what to expect when you got out there, but you were so willing to learn, right?
Absolutely. So, tell us about your business coach. So you got OT Inspire. You still got your therapist company, and you're also doing the business coaching. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So we run OT Inspire mainly as a remote outreach practice. So we provide occupational therapy services to remote Indigenous communities throughout the Northern Territory. The furthest community that we service is about 14 hours from the nearest town, so it's pretty far.
Wow.
A lot of these communities get shut off for 6 months of the year due to flooding, so access can be really tricky, isolation can be really tricky. We use a lot of OT mental health skills in that space, and it's incredibly rewarding work. I've had OT Inspire for almost 7 years. 7 years, I think we are. I'm very bad with these dates, but I've once I was working out there and I realized that there are so many more communities and people that need that support and that need that holistic care. And I was often getting approached by OTs or therapists who would like employment or wanted to do mentoring, and I ended up just creating the Freedom Therapist because there was such a need in this space. I kept seeing therapists burn out time and time again. A lot of them would start their own business, and it was quite a gatekeepy sort of community. No one really wanted to share. There was a bit of competitiveness, which is, I find, really ick. I get the feelings and resonating behind it, but it's not the way I like to operate. And I just found that there wasn't any supports for therapists who were in the space, who were starting out, who were probably experiencing burnout, weren't sure how to charge their value, and just getting quite overwhelmed and really, really stressed in those first few years, which I know we just had a brief chat about off air around how tough it is starting a business, and like you don't get provided with those skills like once we're finished uni as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that sort of motivated your transition from the therapy practice more to that business coaching. You saw that sort of need there. Yeah, I see it as well in support coordination. I think it, when you got that combination of the work being very emotionally charged, and then when you also add in KPIs, billable hours, and the productivity pressure as well, those two things, I think together, I think you can manage one or the other perhaps when you got two together. I think that's when you got sort of recipe for burnout if you don't employ some of those self-care strategies. So that was sort of my opinion, but why do you think burnout is such a significant sort of concern at the moment for therapists and support coordinators? What are some of the sort of contributing factors? Why are people getting so burnt out? Is it the world that we're living in? Is it the work? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a big combination of all of it, right? I think one of the main drivers that I see is all the therapists I work with come in and they are incredibly, incredibly caring, empathetic, compassionate human beings who love what they do so much, and they put everybody else's needs before their own. We live in a society that really, it really glorified that hustle culture. It was like working hard. There's a real standard traditional model of therapy that a lot of us saw was the only way as well. I think that plays a really big part in it, with excessive KPIs, growing to a big team. It's sort of defining what that success model looks like. I also really believe, and like I've noticed all the women that I work with especially, a lot of our productivity and our self-worth is around our productivity, right? We create these incredible businesses, we become incredibly attached to them, but then our self-worth is really attached to that productivity too. And because we are such sensitive, beautiful, caring human beings, when things don't go to plan, we can take that really personally as well. And I know that was my experience too. I do really think that a big part of that is also, the changes with the system, or should we say the not changes with the system and the fees going on there around, increasing our KPIs, increasing how many clients we have to see. And also it's encouraging us to look in a new way nowadays, because we know that traditional model of therapy can be very successful. But when you look at that traditional model of running a therapy practice and having lots of staff and having a big team, 99% of the time we are headed straight for that burnout factor. And so I think it's a massive combination of systemic, emotional, individual, personal factors. There is such a wide range of it, and working with somebody, whether that's a business coach, whether that's a therapist, whoever that is going to give you that extra support in the space, which is so, so necessary. I mean, I know it's helped me leaps and bounds in my practice too.
Yeah. And I think, it affects everyone, burnout, because it's not just the therapist, because burnout results in high turnover, doesn't it? I see it with a lot of the families that I support. Often the therapist that we have 1 year for this person or the family won't be the same therapist in 6 months' time. And it's just so hard, because a lot of the success of therapy, I feel, is due to the relationship that you form with your therapist. That's really, really important part of how successful a therapy intervention can be, you know, actually getting to know the family, particularly like you said with your remote work with Aboriginal families. That trust obviously is vitally important, and building that relationship is vitally important before you even start any sort of therapy intervention. So if there's that burnout that's leading to high turnover, that's just going to mean sort of spinning your wheels. So that's burnout. That's some of the reasons why. What can we do about it? What's some of the strategies that we can employ to sort of reduce that risk of burnout or to manage that emotional load?
Yeah, there's so many, I think. And I think it's so great that we're talking about it a lot more, because it was such a taboo subject ages ago. Now, burnout, I think when you're trying to either prevent it, trying to work with what you've got at the moment, prevention is like key. We know that. So really, really making sure that you've got your protective factors in place. So when we work in the Freedom Therapist Club, we make sure that we've got systems that support us, systems that support our practice, so that we're not doing the same task over and over again. We're taking that mental load off. We're taking that that extra to-do list items off as well. So having really good systems in the back end as a therapist, as a business owner, whichever one you are, is so, so important. You know, working smarter, not harder. Also really trying to stay really accountable with your time management, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but if you can give yourself actually enough time to do the task that you need to do, what I see so often is that we have so many things on our plate, so we might try and cram 8 things into our day, which is absolutely not realistic. But then we're creating this constant time deficit, and we're feeling really crappy about ourselves because we're never actually ticking all the things off our list. So being really realistic with your time and making sure that you are giving yourself enough time as well. I'm so
guilty of that. You know, after this, I've got 10 minutes left. I'm watching for this interview, and then I got to drive half an hour to meet someone, and then I've got to stay there for only half an hour. I said I can only stay for half an hour, and then I'm driving another half an hour. You know, there's no wiggle room. If there's bad traffic, or, you know, if there's something that goes slightly longer, that's my whole schedule sort of thrown out, running late, and then you're stressed. Yeah, I'm so guilty of that. I think we just need to give ourselves a little bit more time.
A little bit more grace, right? Like, yeah. We do like a massive time audit in our first strategy meeting, and honestly, when we set these timers as to how long tasks actually take us, I'm like, why are we giving ourselves 15 minutes for a 45-minute task? And it's not until you start to get really realistic and just like look at it from that non-judgmental perspective, but it's also coming from us as humans trying to do more. So it's getting really comfortable with, you know, not having everything finished or not having everything complete, and being able to prioritize your tasks really well. So there are a few things that you can do, like as a therapist, as a business owner. I also think having a really sound practice strategy. So business strategy, we call it the Freedom Business Strategy, but it's essentially around making sure that you have all the systems in place, but you also know what your end goal is. So whether you're a therapist, whether you're a support coordinator, whether you're running your own private practice, instead of looking at, you know, the way things should be or the way we should be working, like I like to start at the end and work our way backwards. So looking at that end goal and thinking, okay, do I want to have this practice that has 50 staff? That means that I'm in there because that's going to mean I'm in there every single day. Or do I want to run a practice that actually still means that I get to see the clients do the work that I love, because I know we all love doing that work more than anything, and then working our way backwards from there. So I guess it's about not sort of overachieving in that aspect, and starting at that end point and working backwards means that we're not going to overcommit to too many clients. We're going to look at different creative ways of working with our clients. We're going to be better therapists and support coordinators as well, rather than sort of just keeping on going and then crashing and then disappearing from the space for a few years too.
Yeah, I see that with business owners. And I think that's, you mentioned identity just before. It's like tied to that identity of like more, grow, hustle, which is a little bit of a societal thing, and growth for growth's sake. If, you know, there's no point running a practice with 20 therapists if you're completely stressed out and have a really poor quality of life. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily more profitable either, just the more people you have. So yeah, I think you got to be strategic, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. really do. And it also means putting your clients first. I think that's the big part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody thinks that when you're looking at a business plan or strategizing your practice, like that you're putting your own needs first, but you're actually putting your clients' needs first too, because you are going to be serving them in such a better way. You're going to be such a better therapist or support coordinator, and you're going to have that longevity of care and sustainability in your model of care as well, which is so important. So I think that's a huge impact of it too. And then you're also going to have that creative room to be able to go, oh, I want to create that resource for this person, or I want to be able to run a webinar for parents, or I want to, start to do things a bit differently and reach more people too. So I think in this space, like when you want to make a really big impact, it's really quite impossible to do that without looking after yourself too, firstly.
Yeah, totally. No, love it. Love the message. I think, your business is really awesome. I think there's such a huge need for it. Burnout is like a massive issue for therapists. So applaud your business and sort of branching out from your traditional sort of therapy practice model. And as I said, I've got to run because I haven't given myself enough time. I'm a huge hypocrite. Yes, I'm a huge hypocrite, so I'll have to work on that. But thanks so much for tuning in. And if people want to connect with you, they just go to the website or connect with you on Instagram, socials.
At Mia Poko, so at MIAPOKO, otherwise OT Inspire Therapy as well. I absolutely love connecting with therapists in the space, so feel free, sling us a DM. If you're having a hard time, we've got heaps of free resources there too, and we want to keep as many providers in this space as we can, because the work that we are doing is so incredibly, incredibly important, and the human beings that are doing it are so amazing in this space. So let's keep them in there, hey?
Totally, yeah. Thanks so much, Mia. Really enjoyed our conversation. And thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye. Bye.